Welcome, everyone. This is thank you for joining the RecPoker podcast. I'm Chris Jones, filling in for our beloved Jim Reed this episode. The RecPoker podcast. This is the forums edition. This is where we come together and get down and dirty talking about strategy based on kind of the feedback coming through on our forums. And we're always joined by a wonderful group of our RECing crew, who we will meet in just a second. Before we do that, I always want to remind everyone that the RecPoker podcast and everything we do at RecPoker could not exist without our sponsor, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. If you haven't been there, you should go. If you have been there, you should go back. They're a great group of people. They put on a really good tournament and have some fabulous cash games too. So check them out if you're ever in the Minnesota area. And of course, I can't do this without the help of my Recing Crew friends. So Recing Crew, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Keith Brandt. That's MonkieSystem, just about everywhere.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm Fergie56 on the home game, PatBat_33 on Twitter.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50, just about everywhere.
Great. And tonight's post comes from our own MonkieSystem, who just had a fantastic run at one of the biggest Midwest poker tournaments in history. In Michigan at the Firekeepers Casino. He played in the $1,100 MSPT and had a brilliant run. So congrats, Keith.
Thank you.
And we're talking about a hand where we're talking about a live read that helped us make a decision, which is part of our deep dive for the month of June, where we're talking about how do we make adjustments based on things going on at the table, ways players are playing, maybe if we're playing online, some of our HUD statistics, tendencies, trends that they're giving off. And then there's these kind of live situations where we have these live reads and we have these sort of moments where we're really trying to figure out what's going on in somebody's sort of mind and what's motivating them, and making a decision that might be different than what we might do if we're just locked in a room and don't have any other information and we're just trying to play our best poker. We're going to make some different kinds of decisions based on these sort of reads. And that's what we're really exploring all throughout June. We have a really fantastic segment we did in the deep dive. And this hand brings that about. So Keith, you're talking, we're in an $1,100 event. I believe we're in the money at this point. Is that true?
No, not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay, we're not in the money. But we're in a day two, right?
No, this is at the end of day one. So
end of day one.
There was probably, 15% or so. We're going down to 12%.
Okay, so we're closing in on the end of a day one, trying to get a bag. We've got a nice, healthy stack here, and we're in a hand against an also sort of healthy stack, it sounds like. And it sounds like you've been playing with this villain for quite a while. And they kind of open, you've got a read a little bit on their opening range, but have not seen enough to sort of get much in terms of live tells from them. Would that sort of accurately describe sort of the situation?
Yep. Yeah, we'd been together for hours already. I didn't have too much on his range, but I did have a read on his way of thinking. Was he, even when he was shorter, he was always betting 3x. He was always opening 3x. It was he didn't deviate from that at all.
Great.
So
Great.
I even had a note on that player in my notes. I keep notes on my smartphone at the table. And that said, I use the word size blind in my notes, and it's size inelastic, but blind is easier to type on a smartphone playing poker. So,
but that may come in into play as we make some of these decisions as we get toward the end. Okay, so it folds to us. We're on the button. We have King of Clubs, Jack of Hearts, which we open to. The blinds are 2K, 4K, 4K. How much are you playing behind here?
I've got about 250K. He had about the same.
Okay, so we're fairly deep here.
Yeah.
And you open to 10K, about 2.5x. The small blind folds, and immediately you've got a decision before you because our big blind villain raises to 24K. So let's talk about this first of all, this preflop decision, because you had some questions about it later. Um, this is a very small 3-bet. What were you thinking in this moment when you opened? What were you thinking about whether you'd continue against this player, and then what were you thinking when you saw this 3-bet?
Well, first of all, he hadn't been out of line with 3-bets. He had done a few, but he wasn't out of line with them, nor was he a complete rock with them either. So I didn't really read much into the fact of the 3-bet, except for probably a standard range for it of 3-betting in the big blind against a button open.
Mm-hmm.
And but with the king jack, I was thinking at the time that that I'd probably call with this anyway. It'd be at the bottom of my calling range in this spot, button against big blind, king jack offsuit. But the size of his 3-bet made it a trivial call. There was no question in my mind that I make this call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in position. We're against an out of position player. This is an extraordinarily small 3-bet. I'm not even.
Would you ever think about? Would you ever think about raising this?
Interesting.
No, my holding was too weak to 4-bet this. I was just going to call. I was in position. I really saw no need to 4-bet this. I just, to me, it was just
4-bet bluff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kim, tell me more. What's your thinking about? Is that something you might do against this small of a 3-bet?
Especially, yes. Yeah.
And tell me more. Tell us more.
Well, especially in a button versus the blind scenario. Like everybody's range is wider here. Mm-hmm. Everyone's range is wider. So we have to have some bluffs in our range here. When we have to have some 4-bet bluff. We have to have some 4-bets. And we have to have some 4-bet bluffs. And this makes a good 4-bet bluff because we really don't mind throwing it away to a jam from our opponent. And we also, it doesn't play as well post flop because it's not suited. And yes, we have position, but if we're not hitting our hand, we're just throwing it away. So we're sort of just getting, wrapped up. All they have to do is make a C-bet and we fold if we haven't hit anything. So it's, I think these are the type of hands that can play better as a 4-bet bluff, but it's a bit opponent dependent.
Are you thinking about that because of the small sizing or just in general? Or does the small sizing...
In general, in that the small sizing helps, but in general, in that sort of button versus the blind scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I want
I would cold 4-bet this if it was button raise, small blind, 3-bet. I would cold 4-bet this from the big blind.
Yeah, and I agree that that's probably what would happen. But I'm thinking that right now the big blind is probably stronger than normal. And the reason I say that is because of his bet sizing. I don't believe that he's a very studied player. So I think there's two things. First of all, if he had a kind of hand that could fold to a 4-bet, would he be calling the big blind or would he be raising? And so I don't think this is a kind of player that's going to be raising the big blind as a bluff that's going to be able to fold to a 4-bet. So I think he's stronger than you normally would find somebody because of his sizing. I mean, if he's playing optimally, his sizing should be much bigger being out of position. So since he's not playing optimally, I'm gonna assume that he's much stronger than someone who would be playing optimally, who would potentially fold to a 4-bet. So that's kind of the way I would look at it, because he's gonna have a much stronger range just because of how he's playing.
And part of that read, Rob, when you say you don't think this is as much of a studied player, is some of that size in elasticity that Keith was talking about, right?
Right. I mean, if he's opening 3x, no matter what his stack size is, I mean, we all know. I mean, the four of us especially have been talking about c-betting and sizing and all of this stuff based on a GTO concept, and we all know that that's not necessarily optimal.
Right.
So unless he's doing it based on specific reads against specific opponents, that he's betting bigger. But if you've never seen him go 2.5 or 2 in an opening, then you know that he's back in the era where we were looking at Harrington on Hold'em, right? Mm-hmm. Everything was 3x back then. And if that's where he's at, he hasn't caught up to the GTO world yet, then he probably doesn't understand in the big blind that he has an opportunity there to be bluffing. So I'm believing he's stronger than a normal optimal player would be.
Okay. This is so I think it's a really interesting conversation, but let's get into the meat of the hand, because I mean you both make compelling cases. You both make, I mean, I think it is very, I think Kim is absolutely right that we need to have a 4-betting range, and that needs to include some buffs. This is a very good bluff candidate because it has a king blocker. It's offsuit because it makes it less playable post flop. There's a lot of good reasons why this is I mean, we can easily get rid of it if we see further aggression. And Rob, I think you make a compelling case that this player maybe doesn't have that big of a bluffing range, and therefore we might not need as many 4-bet bluffs. But none of that really matters here, because Keith, you elect to call, see a flop, and the meat of this hand really comes toward as this hand progresses. So there's now 50K in the middle. The flop comes the jack of spades, 8 of hearts, 6 of diamonds, and the big blind, who is at this point the lead in this hand, bets half pot. Now we have flopped top pair with a king kicker, so we call. And I don't think there's pretty much anything. I don't think there's anything controversial. Probably not even much to talk about, unless anybody wants to. Or should we get? Because I think this hand gets much more interesting once we get to the turn. But anything to talk about on this flop?
Is this a proper bet sizing for an optimal player out of position for a c-bet?
Well, I know Kim would always love this kind of sizing, but no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just curious. I mean, I think we tend to want to c-bet smaller when we're out of position, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think
because equity realization is much tougher when you're out of position. So by betting stronger, I think it might say that he has a stronger hand than normal. But I think even if one of us was sitting there with aces or kings, we would probably bet much smaller than this, maybe a quarter to a third of a pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree as well, because I think in 3-bet pots, we just generally want to see bet smaller as well, because the pot is already bloated being a 3-bet pot.
Yeah. And everyone's ranges have strengthened. The fact that a 3-bet, although this 3-bet was small, so kind of messes things up a bit. But once a 3-bet gets called, that means everybody's ranges have, there are bluffs in there, but they've strengthened significantly. And that's why that small bet is sometimes, because we can now just remove some of the sort of very low equity garbage, but maintain some playability as this hand progresses if we bet small. So yeah, this is a bit of a larger bet than I think would be recommended, but it's also something to keep in mind about our opponent as we kind of progress in this hand. So the turn, again, the flop was Jack of Spades, 8 of Hearts, 6 of Diamonds. We're holding the King of Clubs and the Jack of Hearts. And the turn with 100K in the pot is a very, very welcome Jack of Clubs. That is pretty much the dreamiest card we could ask for in this situation. Brings a full rainbow. And we now have trip jacks with a king kicker. We're, I mean, there's, I guess ace jack is out there. I guess pocket eights are out there, but I mean, we're pretty golden here right now. So the big blind. And this is how you describe it in the post. Big blind, parentheses, size, bets 24K. So now has kind of continued in with about the same size bet that they did on the flop, which is kind of strange here, given that the pot has. But can you describe this Psy a little bit more? Tell us what you're seeing as this jack rolls off.
Where I'm sitting on the table, he's two seats to my left, but I can kind of see him sort of as I'm also watching the board, and he just kind of went like that, and I could hear it from 2 seats away. So the guy between us must have heard it even more.
Right.
And then he thought about it a little bit, and you could the disgust and frustration just oozed out of every pore in his body. And then he made that small bet on the turn. Right.
And so let's talk. So then you decide to raise a pretty small raise. So you raised a 50K over the 24K that our big blind let out. Tell me what you're thinking about with the raise here.
I'm hoping for a call.
Yeah.
Because I want to get stacks in. If depending on what the river looks like, and I'm keeping more of an eye on him now too to see if I can pick up any more information. And that was what I was thinking. I felt like after the way he acted when that card came out, if I would have jammed or if I would have made a big bet, he would have folded. I felt like I was going to lose him. I needed to keep it. I had a fish on the line. I'm going to have to reel him in. I can't pull too hard or I'll lose him. So that's why I made that small bet.
And then you write that our villain thinks for a while, calls. So now we go to the river, 200K in the pot. And I think this is where a lot of your questions come. So the river is the very, very brickiest of bricks, 2 of clubs for a final board of Jack of Spades, 8 of Hearts, 6 of Diamonds, Jack of Clubs, Deuce of Clubs. The big blind checks to us. What do? We've got 200K in the pot. What does that kind of leave us behind? We've got about 150 behind,
something like that. I estimated at the time, it's too fast to actually do the math at the table, but I estimated we were between half and a full 1 SPR.
Okay,
so we could easily get stacks in,
right?
But then I was keeping an eye on this guy at this point, and now I'm the lead in the hand again, and he has to act first. And I still saw the frustration and disgust, and the way he did his check action with his hand, just kind of like loosely flopping it a couple of times on the felt. And I thought, man, how do I keep this guy? He's given up. How do I keep this guy in here?
So
I was almost convinced that if I would have jammed, I'd have lost him.
Right. And I think this is so we see this action. We're fairly, based on this read and based on sort of this action, queens, kings, and aces are making up a huge portion of this player's range.
That's exactly what I put him on, over pair.
Right.
Nothing else.
And so how do we get paid by this player? when we're seeing this kind of action, and we have a less than one SPR. So I think and we're fairly confident we're just always ahead here. I think mostly we can consider jamming it in, but are we just going to lose this player? So Rob, Kim, what is your approach when you see this kind of action? You've had this kind, you're pretty sure you're ahead, but you don't want to lose this player. I mean, do we just put it in and hope that they feel entitled to this with their aces? Or is there some kind of sizing that we exploitively use in this situation to just try to milk a little bit more?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the same bet on the turn as he made on the flop is in itself a sign of insecurity or weakness.
Yeah.
Or a feeling of weakness. So people should watch for that anyway. And if we have a hand to bluff with, then we can bluff here.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't. We have a value hand. So what we have to put ourselves in our villain spot and say, what would I call if I had aces here? What bet would I call if I had aces here? And, I'm not calling a jam for my tournament life, probably. It's too obvious that you have a jack. Like, what bluffs could you possibly have? So I'm hoping you have an 8 or pocket 10s or pocket queens or something. And I'm going to call a small bet. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I bet here about no more than a third pot so that the villain feels like they have chips left.
Yeah, and that's what I put in my reply is if you bet like 65,000 here, you will leave him with about a 20 big blind stack, which people kind of feel comfortable with. If you put more than that in, then if he's thinking about how much he's going to have left if he calls and loses, if you put more than that in, he may go away. He may just say, no, I'm going to stick with what I have here. It's an extra 15. Basically, it's about a little over 15 big blinds, right? 65.
Yeah.
So I think if you put in that 65 and leave him with 20, he may be apt to call.
Let me throw out a couple other options. I'm not actually advocating for these. I just want to ask the question. What about an almost all-in sizing? Since we've already identified this player as sort of size and elastic, what if we leave them with scraps but leave them still some tournament life? Where we're talking like if they've got 150 behind, we put in a bet of 130. Anyone? I mean, I'm asking a question. I'm not actually even advocating this.
At the time in the action, I didn't have that close of a count on his stack.
On his stack.
So I would not have been able to do that. I might have left him with I might have put him all in anyway.
Right. Okay. So it's hard to sort of figure out on the fly that. Okay. And how about the opposite? Could somebody who is maybe showing some signs of being frustrated, maybe there's like this kind of bit of an entitlement tilt, if we put out a 2 big blind bet into this pot, is there any chance we can get them to go over the top with their aces and kings? No. They're just going to call out all day.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. He based on the actions that Keith described, he was disgusted. And like you say, he had entitlement tilt. And I think the position and the size of the tournament was enough that even though he felt that he was getting robbed because he had the nuts on preflop, that he had enough realization of where he was at that he would probably fold. I mean, there's a lot of players that will never be able to fold over an overpair like that. Mm-hmm. Would never be able to fold aces or kings or queens in that spot. But this player, based on his actions, looked like he was pretty well disgusted and knew that he couldn't. So, yeah, he probably would have called a 2 big blind, but I don't think he would have ever gone over the top of it.
Okay. And so, Keith, what did you actually do in the moment?
I bet the 70K, and he thought about it for 3 disgusted minutes. And this time he wasn't even trying to hide his feelings about it. And he made the call.
With
Queens.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So then I was waiting for the aces, kings, or queens to come out.
Right. Well, nice. I mean, I do think that you probably got as much as you were gonna get out of this hand. Probably. Yeah, I am kind of curious. Yeah, I think that maybe we could go a little bigger on the turn, and then maybe we get a little bit more on the river, but I think you're absolutely right to not go all in here on this river. Because I think you're just going to scare him off for sure.
So he approached me at the next break and told me exactly that.
Yeah, that you just got the max. Yeah. Well, well played. I mean,
Thanks.
Yeah, I think these are good hands to kind of investigate and look back on, and this is a good example. So let me ask you this, since we've been talking about these live reads, absent any of this, if you just had, a blindfold on during this hand, you didn't hear any sighs, you didn't see any kind of like frustrated give up motions, what actions would you have taken different in this hand?
I probably would have loved my hand still. I probably would have eventually wanted to get the chips in, and if he's got ace jack, I'm playing again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's
so
just
you're
how
probably
it's going to have to be.
Absent all this stuff, you're probably jamming that river.
Yeah.
And Rob and Kim, would you agree with absent all this kind of like player read information?
Yeah, the only tendency I might have had would be to just call on the turn and not raise, and let him continue to think his hand's good and be able to put us on 9-10, 9-7, like an ace 8, pocket tens, to be able to continue to value bet into us and then raise the river. And sometimes in those scenarios, someone will find enough bluffs in your range that they'll be able to call a bigger bet. So
and then
it
one other
depends on
thing
what
is that
type of a thinking player.
Another thing was this was trips and not a set. And you always have to worry about the full house. And I've lost a lot of money to full houses in those situations.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of monsters under the bed. I'm not worried about that here.
Yeah,
like I said,
I don't worry about it, but nevertheless, it happens.
It's rainbow, and because we have position, we can just always get to see what he does first.
Yeah.
And that would be the only thing that I might have done differently.
Yeah, I'm looking at this player as I don't know if he would even recognize that somebody might have bluffs because of the sizing that we've seen, and because of the sizing we've seen throughout the last couple of hours that we've been playing with him. He doesn't seem to be the type of player who is making those type of evaluations. He seems more of the type of player who is playing a very ABC game based on his cards and looking at the flop and saying, well, I'm still ahead.
Yeah. And this type of player is also, it could happen, but it's unlikely to have 3-bet so small with 8s or 6s. So it just leaves really like the one combo of jacks left. Well, actually, there are no combo. No, they can't have a set. No. So like they really don't have sets for full houses very often here.
Yeah.
But still,
Have you
well
seen
played.
other...
Go ahead, Kim.
Did you see other 3-bets from this player? Like, was this their normal sizing? Because I find that people sometimes will 3-bet smaller when they have a real premium hand, trying to keep you on the hook.
Yeah, it just,
But
to be honest, I didn't really see anything out of line or odd. I mean,
unusual.
he didn't actually make enough three bets over the course of the time that we had together to really get a read as far as what sizing
know what was
means
normal.
or
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just figured okay, I'll play this size the way it looks, and then when he made the tell on the turn, that changed everything to me.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what he had.
Good read.
Yeah, very good read.
Yeah.
And it's and to put the shoe on the other foot. I mean, it's a lesson to all of us about the way we act at the table.
Yeah.
It's another player can really take advantage of you if you don't have your table discipline down solid.
Yeah, you can be like in your mind, like, please no, like don't have that death card come. But when the death card comes, like, don't react. Like, just don't react because you're done then.
I just want to say about players that will have aces or kings. And this is something that's important if you have a chance to watch players look at their cards, because it's very, very common for recreational players to, and I'm guilty of this as well, is when they have a really big hand like aces or kings, to look at them quick and put them down quick. Like, look at them and they're immediately back down on the table. Whereas a lot of the times we pick up our cards and we look at them and we think about what we're going to do with our hands, and but it's almost like a protection mechanism, and players will look and put them down really fast. And I find myself doing that, and I have to like, crap, I just did that. I hope no one was watching me.
If anything, it's even more important to take some extra time to look at those two big cards, those aces or kings, because you may need to take into account suits later. So you need to take a few extra seconds to memorize the suits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's more important with aces or kings than if you have deuces.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Just try to, if you're starting to look for these things in other players, try to make sure that you're thinking about, are there any things that I'm doing that might lead to these kinds of reads for other players? Because it's just as important for ourselves as well. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. And I just want to thank Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, Rob, Kim, Keith. Thanks for joining us. But most of all, thanks to you, the listeners. Could not do it without you. And we will see you next time.